Hello there and welcome back to my YouTube channel and to today's video all about how to pass your ACCA SBL exam if you have failed it before. Now, I'm joined with a PQ award winner in Sean Purcell today, ACCA SBL tutor, who has kindly come on the channel today to talk about ACCA SBL and how he interacts with students as well to help them to pass if they've failed before. So Sean, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi there. Well done for trying to improve your SBL performance with James. I do a lot of work with both tutors, training tutors, how to teach SBL on behalf of the ACCA, and also do work with students as well. And I've done this for over 25 years, so I have a little bit of experience of what works and what doesn't work. So hopefully my advice is going to add some value to you.
Spot on, Sean. I mean, they're in safe hands today. I mean, getting a superstar like you on the channel, we are not worthy, but I can sense the pens by the students' papers ready to take all of your insights down. But walk and talk us through what's the first fundamental thing if an ACCA SBL student comes to you and says, James, I've failed it now once, twice, 4 or 5 times, however many. What would be your first bit of advice?
Well, the first question I'd ask them is, how many mock exams did you do in preparation for your? He goes, well, I didn't, but I read every chapter and I learnt every chapter. It's like, okay, that's not what the exam is. Not a technical exam, it's an applied exam. And by doing exams and messing up, that's how you're going to pass. I posed a question. I put some article out recently. Why do football teams play friendlies? And the reason they play friendlies is to try the configuration, try a player out, try a style out. And if it doesn't work, or it kind of works but not quite, well, next time they rejig the team and they get better. And that's what doing mock exams is about. And people seem to think it's a waste of time. Oh no, I haven't got time to do a mock exam. I need to study. Well, that's part of the study process. So do a mock, do a mock, do a mock would be my 3 bits of advice.
Absolutely spot on. You've sort of reminded me of all those long evenings doing past papers away, but it's one of those where you think, oh, have I done enough? And you think, oh, I've done 2 or 3, but why do ACCA put 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them on their website for free? Do as many as possible, in my eyes, on there. And it probably gets into time management as well, would you say, as another key area in this exam?
Yeah, I mean, you can go on my website, you can go on the ACCA website. I'll give lots of advice on time management, and yeah, it's all there, it's all out there. But often it seems to go over people's head. It's only when you actually get a bit of experience of doing an exam and think, oh my God, is that the time? That you think, you know what, maybe what Sean said was something I should follow. So you often have to experience failure to become successful. And that's where the mocks come in. You need to get 50 or over on your exam day. And to do that, you need to make a few mistakes, reflect, learn, don't repeat. A few mistakes, reflect, learn, don't repeat. And by that time, you should be in a very strong position of passing.
Yeah, spot on. And it's a really tough paper. Is that a 50% give or take pass rate on this?
Well, all of ACCA papers are tough papers. I think SBL is a different paper from all other papers in that it's not an exam which requires you to regurgitate knowledge or fact. And 1 and 1 is 2 on pretty much all other papers. 1 and 1 is sometimes 2, sometimes 3, and sometimes 4.5, as long as you can justify what you say. So, in business, who's correct? Is Emirates correct or is Ryanair correct? Which one's right? Well, we could obviously argue that both of them are right based on the resources and the strategic approach that they take. So there's not a right and a wrong, but both have valid bases on how they compete. And that's the SBL exam all over, really.
Spot on. No, absolutely. Yeah. These are all key things that I'd be looking to implement. I mean, if I wanted to do ACCA SBL just for fun, maybe, but we digress on that.
It is a fun exam, James. It's real life. And that's another thing. If you can enjoy it and make it fun, you learn without realizing you're actually learning.
Yeah, it's the application is key, and trying to picture the scenario, because with that case study. And it's probably one of the things that some people have been put off by, is just maybe the size of it, or trying to interpret the whole case study, or maybe English isn't your first language. What would be your advice on those sort of key areas?
Oh, two good questions. I mean, if English isn't your first language, you can get some help. I think the term used by the ACCA for the course is kind of puts people off. I think it's a BPP, English language support, which kind of comes across as, well, I can speak English, but it's not to help you speak English. It's about using business English. So,
Mm.
I know people who can speak absolutely perfect French, but they couldn't speak business French. And that's what the course on the ACCA website, I think it's called BPP, English Language or Business Language Support. Look it up. That's a really good course if English isn't your first language. But even if you only speak English, people will struggle
Mm.
with SBL reading quickly if they don't regularly digest some business English, which you can digest through business journalism in decent newspapers, decent kind of management journals, would be my advice. It just
No.
helps. And also, if you absorb it, you see what real businesses are doing. And often the SBL exam is asking you to suggest what to do in a hypothetical business.
Yeah.
But pretty much always the exam is being inspired by real life.
Yeah, trying to picture, imagine I was stood in that boardroom, or trying to picture if I walked into this office on a Monday morning for the scenario you're giving me, because one of the key areas why, in my eyes, people fail it is they don't apply the requirement back to the scenario. They're not going to write for you nearly 15, 16 pages of a case study just for the fun of it, for you not to refer to it on there. Would you agree maybe on that, Sean?
No, exactly. And when we say 16 pages, there are 16 separate pages, but they're not necessarily always full pages. Sometimes it just might be a few numbers, extract from accounts. Sometimes it might be an extract from a newspaper article, just to color in the picture of what's happening around the scenario and what is going to influence how you structure answers to the tasks which you're required to structure answers to.
Nice. And what if someone's watching this, and I might put a bee in your bonnet on this one, Sean, but what if a student comes to you and says, James, I've failed the ACCA SBL exam, and you ask them, have you done your ethics and professional skills module? What would you say to
Yeah,
that,
well,
Sean?
I would say, well, why not? If you
Mm.
haven't, and maybe not your fault, but if you go on the ACCA website, they will advise you to do that before SBL. If you were to ask me for any advice, what should I do to pass SBL? One of the first things would be make sure you do EPSM. So that's essential, and it's kind of it's pretty bad that people haven't been advised by, if they're using a tuition provider, to do that. You also, if you haven't done it, you obviously haven't looked at the ACCA website much, and you should get on there more. It's all
Mm.
free, lots of good
Well,
information.
absolutely spot on. And for a plug of my own channel now, Sean, I've done a video on that. So the ball is well and
Fantastic.
truly in
Yeah.
your court. Obviously, what a fun way to spend my Saturday, Sean, wouldn't you say? But talk me through some key topics in SBL, what you would expect to see sort of on an exam, or what are the key areas in the syllabus?
Well, I mean, there are areas that affect the role of a strategic business leader. So obviously, most people doing exams would be relatively junior. They're not going to be strategic business leaders,
Mm-hmm.
but it's asking you to empathize with the issues that they would have to understand. So you need to know about leadership and strategy. You would need to know about what good corporate governance in a commercial environment looks like. So that's not to regurgitate everything about the COSO report or regurgitate all these principles, but it's to appreciate what you should know what looks good, and the scenario will have some good bits taken away. So it might have a chairman and a chief executive, and you should recognize that that's inappropriate in a modern business way. So you'd need to know a bit about governance. You need to know about risk, and some people say, "Oh, there's too much." Risk is something that we decide how much we want to take. If you're going to make money in life and be in business, you've got to take some risk. Otherwise, just
Mm.
put your money under the bed. So risk is a reality, but it's how much we take and how we manage it, which is what a good strategic leader does. So we need to appreciate about that. What else do we need to appreciate? We need to appreciate how decisions can impact on culture. We then, when making a decision, how do we manage those decisions through good um, project management and good cultural alignment? So it's all those things that a strategic leader would need to have awareness of so that they can do their job as successfully as possible. It's a really interesting paper. It's probably the only paper you will use in life, because I may be a bit biased here, but if I've got a problem with tax, I just get some tax software. I don't get a human being. If I have a business, I don't have my accounts. I use Zero. It's a bot. And the ACCA launched SBL because increasingly much of the traditional accounting transactional stuff, we need to know it, but in real life is done by bots. What SBL talks about cannot be replicated by robots. And that's why it's a really relevant subject.
I agree. You mentioned there about empathizing, or in other words, I would see it as putting yourself in the other person's shoes and trying to think,
Exactly.
what is going on from their perspective here, or what is the situation, and then sort of unpicking that and then relating it back to the requirements that we've been given in the exam. So there'll be some key buzzwords in there. And also the other thing which I've seen from a few past papers is that the requirement can be split out into 2 sections and maybe even 3 bits. So if you don't answer all 3 bits of the requirement, then you're just throwing away marks, in my opinion. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, my thoughts are you've got to answer all of the paper. To answer all of the paper, you've got to have time management. Not only do you have to answer all of the paper, but you have to answer all of what is asked in the paper. And sometimes people see a question that isn't asked, but a different one. And therefore, reading the question is very important. So you need to have discipline. And actually, if you do mock exams, as I said earlier, you might mess up and you'll realize, I misread it. Great, you've learned a lesson. But if you never do a mock, you won't learn that lesson. So time management, mark focus, complete the whole paper. All you need is to get 50 or more. There's anything over 50, wasted energy. Students get very, pleased with themselves for getting 80, and that's great. Let me not take anything away from my students who get 80, 90, but you know what? Wasted energy. All you need is 50.
You'll love this. When I first started at my old practice, one of the chaps who was just finishing his ACCA said to me, James, aim for 100, but achieve 50. That was it. And it stuck with me for ages and ages, because through the exams, you mentioned there about discipline. And that was one of the things that kept me going, as to say, right, I've not got time to keep going on this question. I have to move on, because otherwise I'm not going to answer 100 marks here.
Exactly. And I would actually recommend, when you're answering your question, I would physically, it's a CBE exam, I would type out start, time, finish, and that time budget would be determined by how many marks and how many minutes per mark I'm allocating. And if you're not doing that, you're not running a budget. And as accountants, we run businesses according to targets and budgets. So why are you not doing that in the exam? I don't understand. You must do that to manage your time.
Spot on. No, I completely agree with you. And for those of you who haven't watched our other video, it's a case of what's your sort of basis for time management in the SBL exam? What do you sort of recommend from your perspective?
Well, I think I'll give you what I'd say, and then we can adjust it. It's a 4-hour exam. You've got up to sometimes 16 pages to read through. It's going to take you, I would suggest, if you're reading a business English, like I said earlier and stuff, it's probably going to take you about 40 minutes to digest and absorb and understand all of that. 40 minutes taken from 4 hours. So 240 minutes minus 40 gives me 200 minutes to maybe start answering and getting my marks. But SBL, if you've taken it before, and hopefully only has 80 technical marks, 20 professional skills marks. So those 200 minutes, I'm not going to divide by 100. I'm going to divide by 80, which leaves me about 2.5 minutes a mark. If you spend 50 minutes reading, well, you just have to adjust that equation slightly. My point is, have a budget that you use and you apply diligently to each task in your exam answer. Because if you do that, you've got control, you've got management, and you will answer all the paper, and then you'll pass the exam.
Nice. No, really good advice there. And just to highlight as well, those 20 marks, obviously we're dividing it by 80, not 100 as usual, but the 20 marks are sort of embedded in your actual answer, would you say? Just to clarify.
Yes, the background to professional skills marks are encouraging finance staff to behave as they should behave in the workplace. So one of the terrible, I have another hat on where I work with finance teams around the world on something called business partnering, which is, as traditional transactional accounting is becoming automated, accountants are more useful at giving insight and commercial insight. And to do that, they need a whole set of soft skills, which the exams don't prepare them for. So the professional skills marks are kind of a first step to encourage you to think in your answer through the lens of the professional skills mark mentioned. So, for example, communication, you might get on other exams 4 professional skills. This is 20.
Yeah.
And it's not that you do it in report format and you do 2 from date. What it means is, what's the situation here? What's my role? Well, I'm an accountant and I'm talking to an HR manager. If you're an accountant talking to an HR manager, you don't start talking about EBITDA and accrual and all this crazy accounting language that we in finance use. You use a language which they can understand. And to go back to your word earlier, James, empathy. If we're skeptical, there's there's a chairman in their statement saying, oh, I was pleased with the results, but you've looked at the figures and you can see margins gone down, revenue's gone down when competitors' margins and revenues gone up. So, in a polite way, you're addressing the chairman maybe as a management consultant. I'm not quite clear why you believe results to be encouraging, because your margins dropped, your revenues dropped when your competitors have all gone up. So, that's being skeptical, not taking things at face value. At earlier stages, like, I don't know, but performance management, MPV is positive, let's do it. Well, hang on a minute. Just because it's an absolute MPV figure, there's, where did the discount rate come from? Where did all those guesstimates come from? And that's kind of how you need to believe and behave.
Yeah, but the key,
and that's what professional skills might do.
Yeah, well, the other key thing just to highlight there is, I completely agree with everything you said, but it was the key bit is the application and also relating it to the scenario, what you've really nicely described there, saying about the CEO, sort of what's the situation they're dealing in, the time pressures, all these sort of different ramifications that you need to be aware of. But then it's taking that and getting it in your answer. In my eyes, if you're generic in the SBL exam, you're really going to struggle to pass. But if you're specific,
and yes, also if you use, some students seem to think it's a theory exam and they want to talk about theories, so that you're asked to give a report to the managing director about the competitive nature, and then in your report you say, according to Michael Porter's 5 forces. If think of that in the workplace, you say that to your and then sorry, I've not met Michael Porter. Which department does he work in? Is he a new employee? That's not how you would behave in the workplace. So use the theories. You need to, I think the theories help you structure your arguments. But for me, they're the secret tools of a strategy consultant. A strategy consultant that writes articles in management magazines, I know the theories and I can see they've structured an argument based on a theory, but they never reveal their sources. And students seem to think there's marks going for talking about Michael Porter or whoever else in the exam. It's actually unprofessional. Yeah, there's no negative marking, but markers are not impressed by that.
Right. Oh, good thing to get down. But at the end of the day, just remember what the S is in SBL. And if you don't apply that in your exam, well, it's your funeral, I would say on that. But are there any other sort of final golden nuggets of key things that any student should be aware of, Sean, to pass their exam if they failed it before? What springs to your mind? You couldn't sleep tonight if you didn't tell me.
Well, people are sometimes, they're desperate to do something. They fail. How am I going to pass? And they go looking for help. I think, look at your website, James. I would recommend them to do that. But when working with the ACCA and we look at what's out there, there are some dubious messages from some websites that you should be careful of. So as well as your website, I would look at the ACCA website. If it's not approved by the ACCA, so publishing that's approved is only Kaplan and BPP. So if anyone else is selling your books, well, they're not official. You can, don't take my word for it. Go on the ACCA website, look at who is an official tuition provider, look at who, and it probably has a gold or platinum kind of status. They're the high level status. And, I would say if you're going to spend time studying, spend it with people who the ACCA have acknowledged as people who are going to help you, because unfortunately in this great internet world we live in, there's nothing to stop someone coming on as an expert believing them to be so. You know, you might say, well, you know, how come you're an expert, Sean? Well, go on the ACCA website, look at all the articles that the ACCA have published on, you know, that I've written. You know, if you go to, if you're a tutor and you go to training, I'm often given the training. So, you know, draw your own conclusions from that. But just, I think some students tragically go onto some websites which actually sometimes say the wrong thing, but they're never approved by the ACCA, those websites.
Right. Key
So,
things just to be aware of, especially doing your due diligence, looking online from your own perspective on there.
exactly,
I mean,
exactly,
for
exactly.
me, it's always the free resources on ACCA's website, straight away, going through everything from the syllabus, get all those past papers downloaded on there, and then starting to go through some of the technical articles that people like yourself would not write
Yeah.
them if they were not going to be helpful in my eyes.
No, great. And I think you used a great word there, James. You used due diligence. So if I was to look you up, I would have seen that independently, you know, PQ Magazine have looked at you and thought you are a fantastic help to students passing their exams. Whereas some of these dodgy websites that you can find on wherever, I won't even, but you
The
can find them
internet.
out there quite easily. YouTube, exactly. Nobody gives them credibility from the ACCA or PQ magazine or anything like that. So great, do your due diligence. Do your due diligence would be
Wow.
my advice.
Fantastic,
And
Sean.
even sometimes comments are fake comments. You know, some people have put comments and it's like, well, you're saying that's right, but actually it's wrong. And I think it's their mates making comments to try and say that they're good, but they're not.
All
So be
right.
careful.
Well, if you have enjoyed today's video, everyone, which I hope you have with all the tips, feel free to leave me and Sean a comment below. It's okay. Where if any of your mates, maybe you could tag one of your mates who really enjoy this video. I think that'll go down a treat, wouldn't it, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, we, you know, James and I are just here to try to. We want you to pass your exam, and I don't want you wasting time. You know, taking food that's not going to help you, kind of thing, is what we're saying.
Yeah.
So yeah, wish you all the best. The advice is based on lots and lots of successful and unsuccessful people. So take it. Yeah.
Oh, cheers. Well, thank you so much for today, Sean. And if you've enjoyed today's video as well, give it a massive like and thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe. And if you've got any questions, leave it in the description below. We'll be more than happy to answer and link you to any sort of other free resources. Any other final words, Sean? You're good?
Keep cool. Uh, Make sure you don't just study all the time, that you put some time in the diary to relax, get your brain recharged, and you'll be absolutely fine.
Lovely stuff. Well, on that bombshell, we'll see you next time. Cheers. Thank you very much.